Hello and welcome to the YQ Academy. Today, we will discuss de-dollarization trends around the world. De-dollarization refers to the process of reducing the reliance of a country or region on the US dollar in its economic and financial transactions. Here are some current news on de-dollarization. Russia and China have been leading the efforts to de-dollarize. In April 2021, they signed an agreement to increase the use of their national currencies in bilateral trade and investment. The European Union has also been taking steps towards de-dollarization. In 2020, the EU launched a new payment system called Instex to facilitate trade with Iran without using the US dollar. In Latin America, several countries including Venezuela, Ecuador, and Bolivia have been attempting to de-dollarize their economies in recent years. They have implemented policies such as promoting the use of their national currencies in trade and reducing their holdings of US dollars. Some experts believe that the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the trend towards de-dollarization, as countries look to reduce their reliance on the US dollar and diversify their foreign exchange reserves. The ongoing tensions between the US and China, as well as the US sanctions on countries such as Iran and Venezuela, have also contributed to the push for de-dollarization. Despite the efforts towards de-dollarization, the US dollar remains the dominant global currency, accounting for around 60% of global foreign exchange reserves and more than 80% of global trade transactions. It is unlikely that the US dollar will be completely replaced in the near future, but the trend towards de-dollarization is expected to continue. Some countries, such as Iran and Russia, have been exploring the use of cryptocurrencies as an alternative to the US dollar. They see cryptocurrencies as a way to bypass US sanctions and reduce their dependence on the US dollar. In 2021, the Central Bank of Russia announced that it plans to replace a portion of its US dollar reserves with gold, euros, and Chinese yuan. This move is part of Russia's efforts to reduce its dependence on the US dollar. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, which came into effect in January 2021, aims to promote trade among African countries and reduce their dependence on foreign currencies, including the US dollar. In recent years, some countries have been exploring the creation of digital currencies, which could potentially reduce their reliance on the US dollar. For example, China has been developing its own digital currency, the digital yuan, which could challenge the dominance of the US dollar in international trade. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has warned that de-dollarization could lead to greater volatility and fragmentation in the global financial system, as different countries and regions use different currencies for trade and investment. Some experts argue that de-dollarization could have long-term consequences for the US, as it could reduce demand for US Treasury bonds and weaken the position of the US as the dominant global economic power. Overall, de-dollarization remains a complex and evolving trend in the global economy, with different countries and regions taking different approaches to reducing their dependence on the US dollar. In May 2021, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced that it will no longer sell foreign exchange to bureaus de change, BDCs, due to their alleged involvement in illicit financial activities and their role in the depreciation of the naira. The move is seen as a step towards de-dollarization, as it will encourage Nigerians to use official channels to access foreign exchange and reduce their reliance on BDCs, which typically use US dollars. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has called for greater efforts towards de-dollarization, arguing that it could help promote more stable and sustainable global economic growth. UNCTAD has recommended measures such as the use of regional currencies, the creation of regional financial institutions, and the promotion of cross-border payment systems. In March 2021, the Iranian government announced that it will launch a new national cryptocurrency to facilitate international trade and bypass US sanctions. The new cryptocurrency, called Payman, will be backed by Iran's national currency, the rial, and will be used to settle transactions with countries that are not subject to US sanctions. Some experts argue that de-dollarization could have positive environmental impacts, as it could reduce the dominance of the US financial system and promote greater global cooperation on issues such as climate change. In April 2021, the central banks of China and the United Arab Emirates signed a currency swap agreement to increase the use of their national currencies in trade and investment. The agreement is part of China's efforts to promote the use of the Chinese yuan in international transactions and reduce its reliance on the US dollar. Overall, the trend towards de-dollarization is likely to continue in the coming years, as countries seek to reduce their dependence on the US dollar and diversify their foreign exchange reserves. The implications of de-dollarization for the global economy remain uncertain and complex, and will likely continue to be the subject of debate and discussion among policymakers and experts. In May 2021, the governor of the Central Bank of Russia, Elvira Nabiullina, stated that Russia aims to reduce the share of US dollars in its national wealth fund to zero. The National Wealth Fund is currently worth around $186 billion and is Russia's largest sovereign wealth fund. In March 2021, the Central Bank of Turkey announced that it had signed a currency swap agreement with China worth $10 billion. The agreement is part of Turkey's efforts to increase the use of its national currency, the lira, in international trade and reduce its dependence on the US dollar. In February 2021, the Central Bank of Iran announced that it had launched a new payment system called the Iran Payment System (IPS) to facilitate domestic and international transactions using Iranian rials. The IPS is seen as a step towards de-dollarization and reducing Iran's reliance on the US dollar. In April 2021, the Central Bank of Egypt announced that it had signed a currency swap agreement with China worth $2.7 billion. The agreement is part of Egypt's efforts to increase the use of its national currency, the Egyptian pound, in international trade and reduce its dependence on the US dollar. In 2021, several countries, including Russia, China, and Iran, have been actively promoting the use of gold as an alternative to the US dollar. They see gold as a safe haven asset that can protect against currency fluctuations and inflation. In March 2021, the Central Bank of Pakistan announced that it had signed a currency swap agreement with China worth $1.5 billion. The agreement is part of Pakistan's efforts to increase the use of its national currency, the rupee, in international trade and reduce its dependence on the US dollar. Overall, de-dollarization remains a complex and evolving trend in the global economy, with different countries and regions taking different approaches to reducing their dependence on the US dollar. The trend is likely to continue in the coming years, as geopolitical tensions and economic considerations drive countries to diversify their foreign exchange reserves and reduce their exposure to the US dollar. Thank you for watching the YQ Academy video. Consider subscribing in order to receive more videos like this.